This time we will glance at how technology impacts the future, how to join IT in practice, and we'll dive into the project management topic. I can see Jane. She's here with us already. You cannot see her yet. I think that in a moment you'll see Jane. Jane could not meet us in person today, but she's here straight from Denmark, and Jane will speak about the technology of the futures.
Thank you, Alina, and thank you very much for having me. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. Unfortunately, due to international travel, so simply not time enough to get to you. So we can do a lot of things digitally, but we are not yet able to make all the time squeeze into a short part. So I just arrived back from the US, and as said, I would love to be there, but I'll try now to give my view anyway on why I think we, especially as women, have a big role to play, but also a little bit on what is the future going to be like for us when we look forward in digitalization. So I hope that you also will be able to see my slides. Yes, thank you. So just a quick introduction. So as Alina said, Jane Rygaard, I am part of Nokia's mobile networks, which means I am working in the area of what 5G is today and 6G is going to be tomorrow. In this technology span, I'm looking at things like how we use networks like 5G and 6G, not only for us as consumers, but also for industrial applications and the rest of the world, I would say, from on top of our normal consumer lives. Having said that, if you go to one slide forward, I will talk a little bit first on the scope of what digitalization means, and then I'll round up in the end on what is my journey into this part. So if you go to the next slide, please. So digitalization changes how we live. Of course, you can say we, and I think all of you in the room also for the last couple of years, we've suddenly had a change on how we live in being digital, where digitalization has been, I would say, if I look at my teenage daughters, it's mainly about how much can I stream of content of the internet, and therefore we use the technology for entertainment. But as COVID hit the world, we also saw that how we go to school, study, work, everything else suddenly changed, because we couldn't be together face to face as we used to, whether it was in an educational context or it's even how we work. What happened as this digitalization is hitting us not only as citizens in a society or as consumers of services, it's also changing how we work. And there's a big part of the world that might have been digital already, but there's a big part that had a really steep learning curve as we closed down the world the last couple of years. So if you go to the next slide. I'm just going to show here, and I don't expect you to follow the graph completely, but as we closed down the world, who had the easiest way of containing or maintaining their business and still be able to work the same way as we did before? That was what I would call digital mature industries. So that's a red curve. When did digitalization happen? You can think about, do we buy things online? Am I able to engage in some countries with the government online? How do I behave in a digital mature environment? And this is mainly what is here called e-commerce, and how we were able to shop online already in 2015, and this is from even though it's a US, it gives a very good global picture as well, to say that the technology had matured enough on the IT side, on how's the platform working, how can I pay, but also in the consumer side of saying, what is the behavior and are people able to engage on this? However, as the world closed down in 2020, we saw that a lot of what he has called physical leading industries suddenly had a very sharp wake-up call. Am I able to run manufacturing? Can I run any logistics systems? Can I run even transportation systems? You can say, did we move ourselves around? Was there any trains available? Did we have to fly? Well, not too much because the world was closing down. but the importance of being digital suddenly became very, very clear. I can also say from many businesses, the pure fact of saying you were not in the same room to even sign a purchase order from business to business was something new. So what we see now is that because of COVID and because of emerging technologies, and they're listed here on the side, what is called 5G plus enablers, now is really the time where things are happening. They're happening leading in the physical industry with things like manufacturing, because there's more money as a first step, but then also agriculture. How do we make sure we can leverage the benefits of being digital? Why am I saying this to you? Because you can sit in the room and saying, this has got nothing to do with me. I'm looking at a different career. Well, the point is, if we look at 5G technologies, if we look at private networks, if I look at augmented intelligence, if I look at machine learning, if I look at AI in general, if I look at XR technology, all of this is what is enabling this digital transformation of specifically physical leading industries. If we go to the next slide, this is why it matters. Money talks. Up until now, investment in ICT, so IT and communication technologies, have been mainly on digital industries. So if you look in the past, which is this nice 70% you see on the left-hand side, 70% of all investments has gone into digital industries. If we look to the future, because of this transformation part, 65% of future investment will be going on in what is here called augmented physical industries. This is where we start putting the technology and the physical world closer. So we don't have a digital IT system and then we have a physical part, but we start saying the physical world will include robots, it will be including even human augmented parts, and suddenly the two worlds emerge in a part. And the investment is going to be heaviest on the part that is augmented physical industries, which is, just to give you a hint, is where the salaries are going to be paid from in the future. So if I go to the next slide. Why do I want to say this? Well, because there is a very strong human connection in whenever we have a digital transformation, and I now try to say to you, there is money for this digital transformation because the investment is definitely going to be there based on the learnings industries have had in the last couple of years. But when we come to the human connection, when we design, whether it's IT systems, whether it's the right AI algorithms, whether it's the technology and communication that sits underneath on how do we empower and have the network technology to do this, if we only develop technology based on as one stereotype, and I'm going to say this because we are in a conference today where it's about women and what difference do we make. If we don't make our technology and the innovations we do reflect society, we are not going to make the right decisions for what it is the technology is going to be used for. I'll give you two examples that is normally close to my heart and might for some of you be closer to yours as well. So the first one I want to take as an example is that around 150 years ago, there was a so-called chair invented that was supposed to be used when women give birth. And the person who invented it was a man. And my question to all of you is, how many men do you think have the experience of having a childbirth and actually be able to produce a product that makes sense for the user? In this case, I would say that 100% wrong in terms of at least experience. He might have been relying on input from other people. But if we don't have the right inventors for the future, we're going to get the wrong product for the people who's going to use it, whether it's something in our personal lives or in our work life or as a society. The next part I want to give you as a connection to us as people is really, if you look at the statistics around safety systems in cars. So up until recently, more than 90% of all car crash test dummies were made so that the one in the driver's seat represented height of 180 centimeters, a certain weight, and a certain physics of that crash test dummy. That also meant that the crash test dummy on the passenger seat in the front, was actually modeled more like a woman. A little bit not as tall, everything else that comes with it. That also means that if you, and not to scare any of you to drive, but if you are an Asian woman in a standard car, the safety system is least made for you. Why? Because in average, Asian women are not as tall, they're not as wide, and they're not as heavy, which means that the overall safety systems of the cars are actually not designed for, I would say, most women. So who has the most accidents? Who has the most fatal accidents of car crashes around the world? Well, it is, unfortunately, Asian women. Would it not be nice if the technology and the way we think about what we do and how we connect what we do in the real world also with the users? So what I'm trying to say is that if we don't have the right diversity in the people making the technology, we're not going to get the right usage, and we're definitely not going to get the right products out in the other end. So for me, it's very strong it's very, very strong to say when we make technology, and now you can say, I'll give you two examples that might not have anything to do with IT as such, but if we don't have our developers and if we don't have the innovators reflect over all the society we live in, we will get the wrong products and the wrong solutions. So if you go to the next slide, that leads up to why is it even more critical right now? Well, that is because we have a challenge. We have a challenge as the whole globe, not individual countries, and that is that there is no green without digital. We are simply not able to come up with the right solutions for climate change. We're not able to cut down on Western's use of electricity and everything else in the right way if we don't have digital solutions. But at the same time, because it's such a key part of it, if we don't design the digital solutions so that they fit us all, not just a male population of the world or what they think that they should be, and no offense to the men, if any in the room of this journey, but we need to have a diversity. And that doesn't mean that it's all women or all men. We need to have a mix of men, women, different educations, different kinds of backgrounds. All of it goes together. And this diversity will give us the best end results on solving the technology and finding the right technology to solve for instance, the climate change that we're standing for. So we know we cannot cut down on electricity. We know we cannot produce the right parts without being digital. And again, some of it we saw already. How much do we need to travel? Now, unfortunately, I can't be with you, but at least I can be here in a digital space, which means, again, we're using technology to overcome some of the parts that says we would like to be greener all the way through. Then, next slide. A little bit on my own journey. And please feel free, since I'm not in the room, right, let Alina and others know if there's any questions afterwards. But my journey into this world of, I would say, digital transformation, but very much also technology, and why is it so important we hear, all of us. And I hope that I can inspire some of you to really use this as well in your own journey forward. I started many years ago as studying mathematics and physics in high school. And I went on to the Technical University of Denmark, where I graduated with a Master of Science in Engineering. At that time, I already, you can say, I come to the conclusion I'm not very good at working on things that doesn't have a purpose. So my purpose was always trying to see what is this human connection? How do I do something that makes a difference for a bigger picture or connect into it? And I really think that's a strength for us, because we have, as women, I would claim a different view on the bigger world. How do we make our societies work, how do we make families work, how do we care for another, and how do we make sure that we then don't develop technology for the sake of technology, but we develop technology because it makes a difference for what we want to do out in the real world. After university, I graduated. I have wrote my thesis in something as exciting as using superconductors to measure brainwaves on people. I will say the biggest learning from this was that after a year and a half that I spent after my university years, where I worked in the same, I did research. My biggest learning is that what you need to do up until now is that you need to learn. You need to learn to learn. So you need to continuously think that whatever you learned, you might not use one-to-one in the future, but it's given you the ability to constantly acquire new knowledge. And why is that important? That is important because the world keeps changing. If I had given this presentation 3 years ago, I would have not have mentioned a digital transformation of digital industries. I would not have talked about how COVID changed the digital landscape of how we live and work, because it's not happened. So if we're not able to adapt, if you're not curious on the future and curious about learning new things, then I would say that you lost out on the biggest element of what a education can give you. After a year spending on research, after my master thesis, I then continued into spending 2 years in investment banking. And you might say, what is the linkage between having an engineering degree and investment banking? Well, it's very, very simple. All mathematical models used in investment banking is based on physics. So I was literally hired because I knew how gas molecules moved inside a box. Because the model, the mathematical model for that one is the same as volatility in a stock market. You can price everything if you understand this fluctuation backwards and forwards. Those years in investment banking definitely, again, apart from teaching me that I love technology and I needed to go back into something that was more IT and technology heavy, it also really opened up my eyes of saying, where is it possible to prioritize? Where do you get the right money to do the right things? So this money flow, and you remember that I said earlier, like, why is this important? Well, because this is where the money is. If we don't follow a logic of also a money trail, we will end up with too much that is not, you could say, not being prioritized. It might be the wrong reasons for doing it, but it definitely taught me this way of saying, okay, but if there is a way of arguing for a business case, there is a way of also arguing for why this is important. Then, as I said, I missed technology, and I went back into the world of technology by joining Nokia. And the key part here is that I joined Nokia and in the services organization. So again, when we come out, and at least when I was standing with my initial education, I thought that this was it, right? I could do this one thing, or at least I had a pretty clear idea of what there is in terms of work spaces for what I had done. What my 20 years in Nokia have taught me is that this is the starting point. And again, coming back to the agility and following an interest, following a passion for what you do will sometimes open doors that you didn't think was going to be there, but also give you challenges that has been extremely valuable for me to go from. So I started in services, which means I was one of the ones carrying back then a small pager, but basically emergency support when mobile networks were breaking down around Europe. You would get not always a call because the network didn't work, but you would be the one trying to make sure that things were fixed in the background. I spent my first couple of years in Nokia like that. Then I had an opportunity to take the work with me, but move to New Zealand. Now, that is on the other side of the world. So coming from Denmark, apart from being in the absolutely wrong time zone for family and friends, you also, at least for me, I learned the hard facts of being not in Europe. And this might sound really, really strange, but as I said, just time zone wise, but also how far away it is. Even if you want to do something and get hold of people, just flying people in takes minimum 26 hours. And again, even today, you can't do something, oh, let's just do this. You have to plan ahead, or if not, you have to use digital communication parts to make sure that it happens. So I spent 3 years in New Zealand. I then went on to Finland, where I joined global sales. And again, had I thought about what I was doing when I did my engineering degree, I didn't think about sales. But I loved it. I ended up with, you could say, traveling the world and really having fantastic, amazing customer discussions on the sales side of the technology portfolio. Then, in order to balance my work life for this, I ended up in marketing and did quite many years in marketing because they gave me less travel and more family time. But then 3 years ago, I joined back into the Mobile Networks Business Group and is now heading this team where we look at the business for private networks, so networks that goes into solving these digitalization of industries, but also edge cloud. So really where the IT application thinking merges with the network. Could I have done any of this without my journey? No. Could I have done this without constantly being curious and constantly wanting to add on top of what I already have? No. So my biggest advice, and what I hope that could be inspiration for all of you, is that make sure that you don't close any doors as you go move forward. Keep them open, be curious, be agile, so continuously learning, because the world of tomorrow is not going to be the same as the world as yesterday. And you are very much needed to be part of this technology journey, but also the society journey of how we actually solve the problems for the globe going forward. Alina, I think that was this back to you. I'm over my time, and I hope that it was inspiration for somebody on this journey of technology that we all need to be part of.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.